Welcome back to Season 6 of the Group Practice Accelerator podcast, brought to you by Polaris Healthcare Partners, where we leverage decades of healthcare and business experience to drive growth in successful group practices just like yours. If you're a healthcare entrepreneur and you're interested in building, scaling, or exiting your group practice, you've found not only the industry's leading resource for business education, but a team of trusted advisors dedicated to helping you achieve and exceed your goals. In short, the team at Polaris creates clarity, confidence, and results. I'm your host, Jamie Falasz, and the Group Practice Accelerator podcast is on the air. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me again this week. So over the last 3 weeks, we've brought you a series called The Freedom Formula. 3 episodes centered around creating personal freedom because far too often, we talk with principals and founders who feel tied to their healthcare organizations. If they step away, they see productivity and revenue dip, and they're too much in the business rather than taking a more growth-centric role as CEO to work on the business, which we know is a really productive way to expand. So in part 1, DeWalker and I talked about some high-level, thought-provoking questions around foundational pieces. Really, there were the questions that you needed to answer for yourself, and they are answers that will lay out your roadmap for the future. Essential. So then in part 2, Carrie Smith, CEO of Dundas, and I got into some more critical details of operations and compliance that are really essential to implement early on and that make your organization solid and scalable and your time more free. Then last week in part 3, Nan Meehan and I dove into creating personal freedom around your exit. And we know that looks different for just about everyone. But we looked at both pre and post sale and what freedom can really look like from beginning to end in that process. So today, we're bringing you part 4, what comes next, right? What happens after the exit and what happens specifically with your money after you exit, that transition, whatever shape it takes for you. Today's guest has been featured on Fox News, CNN, NBC, and USA Today. And his aim is to empower docs with a step-by-step plan for financial freedom. We're all behind that. So please help me welcome Jonny Withananchchi, founder of Walk of Wealth Mastermind, alternative and passive income for dentists, doctors, and clinicians. Jonny, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jamie.
Hey, good to see you. I'm excited for today's conversation.
Yeah, me too. I mean, first of all, I had a chance to, and by the way, I'm Dr. Jonny Withananchchi, just so that people know I'm an endodontist by trade. And I just want to put that out there that I'm a dentist talking about this stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I had a chance to actually binge listen to some of Polaris' podcasts.
Thank you.
After you told me about it, and I have to tell you what you guys are doing there, Polaris is doing is incredibly important because most dentists, only sell one practice or company in their lifetime.
Yeah.
And getting that exit exactly right could mean the difference of millions of dollars.
100%.
Right?
100%. And I want to go back to you mentioning that you're a doctor. Yes. A, thank you for bringing that up. B, that really matters in terms of what I'm going to classify as credibility, because you've already walked in their shoes, right? You know how this goes. You've been there. And to have someone that docs can relate to is really valuable. So thank you.
Yep, sure, absolutely. And what I wanted to say is that Polaris is helping to build that. Selling the practice is a huge liquidity event, right?
Yes.
But that is not in itself a financial freedom event. Right?
True.
So, right?
True.
So
yes.
That's why I think that's where we want to kind of I think that's where we come in part 4 of this series is the exit isn't the finish line.
No, it's not. It's not. I'm glad that you phrased it that way, because really what you should be thinking about is, what should I do after I sell? And we touched on this briefly in part 3, knowing I was going to get to talk to you. I was so excited about that. But like you and I discussed on an earlier call, the goal is to turn this exit, however that looks to you, this liquidity event, into lasting wealth. Because for many of our clients, they've just sold a group practice, right? They've got a chunk of cash. So help us. Now we have a chunk of cash. Where do I start?
Yeah. And that's that's an incredibly powerful question, right? Because you spend 20 or 30, 20, 30 years building this incredible asset, building this incredible business. And that's what this whole podcast is here to optimize. But have you spent even 20 or 30 hours planning what happens after you actually sell it?
Yeah, probably not. Probably not.
And that's where we aim to fill that gap, right? Because when you don't confuse net worth with income,
Right.
that's a huge distinction that I think a lot of dentists like, okay, this is the finish line. We've made all this money. Now we're set.
Mm-hmm.
But really, you know, okay, I sell my practice for $9 million. I'm set. Well, I would say maybe not, because it comes down to how much monthly income do we actually need to create? Because it becomes a completely different question, right?
Yes.
Financial freedom isn't determined by how much money you receive. It's determined by how much income your assets can produce, right? So how much money do I need to pay my bills,
Mm-hmm.
to, to give to charity, to fund vacations, to fund leisure activities that I like to do. Whatever it is that you want, you're going to need income. Because now all of a sudden after the practice sale, you get a big chunk of cash. But now the mindset has to change to creating net worth and creating income, right? So I think that's where a big transition happens for a lot of dentists. And it's a mindset shift that changes,
Yes,
right?
that's
Because
absolutely true. And
Mhm.
really, what we're trying to do is maintain a lifestyle and grow your money, which brings me to Walk of Wealth. Tell us more. Tell the audience about how you arrived at creating Walk of Wealth and what you do for clients. And then we're going to jump into some details.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, the number one thing is creating a life of freedom, right? And having the options. And what Walk of Wealth does is allow dentists to build that life of optionality.
Hmm.
And the best way to do that is by creating assets, building a base of assets that produce income, right? So this is diversifying outside of stock markets and outside of all of the traditional things that don't necessarily provide you the income that makes your life, that sustains your life. So this is where Walk of Wealth sort of steps in and bridges that gap.
Okay.
It's dentistry creates wealth, but investing creates freedom. Go ahead, Jamie. I'll let you sort of steer it.
Okay. So we'll go back to what I asked a minute ago. If you have a chunk of cash and we're trying to maintain that lifestyle, now that we know there's Walk of Wealth to help, and I love the ideas that you and I were bouncing back and forth in our earlier conversation. Let's talk to doctors about they're going through an exit right now. What are the first things that they should be considering with that liquidity event, with that chunk of cash, essentially, as soon as they close?
Well,
Or
I mean,
maybe it's before. You help me.
yeah, I mean, I think the planning should start, before the actual exit, right? And then so you're kind of hitting the ground running. I mean, the number one thing, then probably not probably the biggest expense everybody listening to this podcast will ever have is taxes.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would do is look, how do we optimize for taxes? There's huge capital gains implications, right? But there's
Mhm.
a lot of ways to mitigate that tax, and building a strategy around that, I think, is probably one of the primary things that you should be doing, right off the jump.
Yeah, I think that is something that jumps to people's minds immediately when they think about that large amount of income coming in that, oh gosh, what are my taxes going to look like? So, yeah, number one, let's work out a tax strategy. Critical. What about investing? Give me some
Great.
thoughts on that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so when I'm talking about investing, we're talking about investing in assets that produce income, talking about investing in real estate, investing in oil and gas, investing in businesses, right? Cash flowing businesses. Uh, and so one of the big things you have to understand and think about is how much do I actually need per month, right? Of
Okay.
income in order for me to be comfortable. We call that a wow number, right? Walk of wealth. That's our little
I
thing.
like it. Very
So,
clever.
yep. And the wow number is not just your bills, but this is also, hey, how much money do I want to put aside for travel and put aside for leisure activities, put aside for charity, for giving back to communities, etc.
Mhm.
Whatever it is that it drives you. And that should be a tangible number. And for everybody, that's going to be a different number.
Sure.
And that what the particular number is doesn't really matter. It matters for you in your lifestyle and what you want to have, that wow number, right? So once you've had that wow number, now it's intentionally working backwards to invest across asset classes that can actually produce that income,
Mhm.
right? Because now if you've started taking this chunk of cash and slowly in investing it across multiple different types of investments, different types of asset classes, right? Diversification. I'm gonna get back to that word in a second.
Yes.
And working backwards to intentionally invest in a way that you're producing that monthly wow number. Once you've created that, now the optionality in your life increases greatly, right? You don't have to worry about, hey, how am I going to get income, or how am I going to live without drawing down on this big, huge nest egg that I've built.
Exactly.
But instead, living off there's a saying that some wealthy people say, and I think probably it's a TikTok meme. It's that always live off the interest, never off the principal, right? If you live
Exactly.
off of that sort of principle, then you can never go broke, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest things that we talk about, at Walk of Wealth.
Sure. And I think that when you're thinking of your lifestyle, your wow number, you're thinking about not just your what does it take to get by every month? It's your vacations. It's do I have somebody going off to college that I need to pay for? What big life event? Am I buying a home in 2 years? What big life events do I need to plan for? And that kind of brings me to the next category that I would love to get your thoughts on is passive income.
Mhm.
Can you address that a little bit? Because I know that you and I talked about it a little, but that's a great way to ensure that you've always got more money coming in and that your money is working for you.
Yeah. So passive income. I mean, some people will look at that and say, there's no such thing as passive income,
Yeah.
right? And I would argue that there is a kernel of truth to that, but
Yeah.
there are ways to invest where you're not the primary driver in real estate, right? So you can
Yes.
actually invest passively through things called syndications, and you can invest in income funds. You can invest take passive LP or limited partner roles in all types of investment. When you're investing in businesses, when you're investing in oil and gas, as all of these things that I've mentioned. But when I'm saying invest passively, that means you're not the person going and actually doing the day to day, right? So let's take a real estate investment, for example.
Okay.
If you invest in a syndication in a multifamily property, say you take a beautiful multifamily property, well located in a great market, and it's a 350 unit apartment building. Well, you might not own that full outright, but you might own a small percentage of that building,
Hmm.
which is professionally managed by a general partner that's not you, right? So now by taking small positions in different type of investment, that's actually, investing as a limited partner. This is a way that you can passively invest in all types of different real estate without actually doing the work. So now when you own a small percentage of an apartment building, maybe it's a small percentage of a nursing home, maybe it's a small percentage of a mobile home park, maybe it's a small percentage of an industrial in the data centers, whatever that is. Now that means that you are privy to that small percentage of cash flows, small percentage of profits, and a small percentage of tax strategies like, cost segregation and bonus depreciation, like different things that you can get all the advantages of investing in real estate while not being the primary driver, right? Like not being the
Yeah.
general partner, not doing the day-to-day operations. And that's a passive investment. So now what we talk about with Walk of Wealth is concentration is and I want to come back. This is a great place to tie in diversification versus concentration. When we're building a dental business, one great business, staff, all your wealth and income come from that one asset, right? It's concentrated risk. And that's a great way to build wealth.
Yeah.
But then once you built this great wealth, and you've got this liquidity event, now the hat has to change. You don't need to be concentrated. Now, this is where diversification comes in. Your wealth and your income shouldn't be tied up in one place at this point. You built the hard part of building the wealth. Now it's diversifying across assets that can give me income, right? So now if I own small percentage of 100 different across real estate projects, oil and gas, different sectors of the U.S. economy, right? The biggest sectors in U.S. economy, real estate, number one, number two, energy, right? If you're focusing on the areas that the government also incentivizes, this is a great place for you to start diversifying and getting multiple streams of passive income, which helps to de-risk your entire portfolio and your entire life, while at the same time increasing optionality, right? So this is the whole transition from concentration to diversification through passive investing.
Yes, an important point that you made early on in this is that passive income, okay, the term is arguable. We'll call it passive-ish, where you're taking part of your money and letting it work for you in some fashion. We're not trying to make you a landlord of a 30-unit apartment building, like you said, but you can own part of it. You can have partners. There are creative ways to go about this. And I love your views on concentration risk. Your business in healthcare, again, that's one thing. And now that you've exited in the way that you want to exit, you've had this liquidity event, let's find ways and places to let your money start working for you so that you're not in that day to day, so that you actually see that passive-ish income that feeds your lifestyle, right? Again, and that ties back into investing, your tax strategy, the whole portfolio, which I wanted to talk to you about. Portfolio construction is something you touched on in one of the initial conversations when you and I talked. Can you kind of round that out with these other elements for us and what that looks like? I would say ideally, I know it's going to change for everyone, but.
Yes. I mean, this is basically guidelines. And by the way, this is not meant to be tax advice or financial advice. This is really meant to sort of open the listener's eyes to a different way of thinking, a different way to approach, right? So, and what was the question? I'm sorry. I lost
I was talking about, that's okay. No, you have to throw the legal disclaimer in there. I totally get it. But just total portfolio construction. I know that will look different for everyone, but what does that ideally look like for you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And what I do is I try to emulate what other wealthy people do, right? And if you look at other groups like Tiger 21 and all of these really like high net worth groups, they have a sort of a formula, right? And everybody's going to be different because risk tolerance is different, timeline for investing is different, philosophies, values are all different. But typically, you have a percentage of your portfolio that's allocated towards, your traditional investing, and I should say stocks, but that includes, ETFs and all of the different ways that mutual funds and all the different ways that you can invest in stocks, right? So some people have a certain percentage of their portfolio dedicated towards stocks. Right. There's advantages to stocks, right, in terms of liquidity and other types of advantages. So I don't poo-poo completely on the stock market. And I think that there's a time and place for the stock market, but that's only one part of what wealthy people do. A lot of dentists, for example, they invest in their practice and then they invest in the stock market and then that's it. But if you look at the really ultra wealthy people in this country, that isn't what their portfolios look like at all, right? So there's stock market, and then you have a percentage that might be in, for example, alternative assets, right? This is where we like to play. So real estate. Real estate has there's a significant chunk of real estate in every wealth person's portfolio I've ever seen, right? And so I think having real estate, a percentage towards real estate is a great way to do it. Now, how you invest in real estate, that doesn't mean that you have to go out and buy a single family house and manage a tenant.
Right.
Real estate can come in different flavors, right? And there's a lot of different ways to invest in real estate. And we focus on the ones that are passive because we don't want to focus on building another job, right? We want to focus on
Exactly.
we
Well
want to
put.
focus on our life. Yes. And then there's, another percentage that might go into fixed income, right? Now, even within fixed income, most people think about bonds, government bonds, corporate bonds. But there's other types of fixed income. There's private fixed income where you can actually invest in debt, in real estate, in businesses, and all types of different things. So this is a great way to diversify the income portion. So a percentage of your portfolio might go towards this type of investing, right? Fixed income. Bonds are supposed to be risk-free, lower debt. Investing in debt in general is considered lower risk. And then you might have another percentage investing in energy, right?
Mhm.
Oil and gas. And then another percentage in businesses, right? Businesses are a great way to build wealth it's a high yield bucket, we call it, right?
Yes.
So real estate will give you sort of a conservation of capital. It could churn out income. It'll churn out wealth in a very predictable way. But real estate is a get rich slow scheme, right? As people say, some people say.
Yeah.
So, but it's a get rich for sure scheme, but it's a get rich slow scheme. And
Mhm.
then, so some people have a percentage, wealthy people invest in businesses, right? Where there's a potential for a bigger equity multiple. So it's a wealth producer. So now getting a portfolio construction where you have a little bit of all of these things, I think is very prudent, especially as a dentist that's exiting. Right.
Yes.
And it has the whole, this isn't the end. This is a new beginning.
And Dan and I talked about that last week too, is that this is just a next phase. Like, you haven't
Yes.
reached the end of the road. That's not it.
Hopefully not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully not.
Yeah.
So, perhaps that, you're staying on 3 years or 5 years, and you have to look at what your earnout is. And, there's so many things that go into that based on the exit that you have planned for yourself and found the right buyer to work with to make that happen. But at the end of the day, that whole portfolio is where your optionality lives, right? All the things that you're naming, real estate, businesses, tax strategy, investing, you have choices now.
Yeah.
And so that's really the important thing. Um, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit here because, what episode of the Group Practice Accelerator would be complete without talking about your feelings? Let, let's talk about the emotional side of the exit. You
Yes.
see docs come to you, and I think it's something important to address because it's a huge life event. I know, like, loss of identity can be
Yes.
really valid. So talk to us about what you see with docs during their exit and afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the opportunity to work with several doctors that have come to this point in their careers, and they're really smart people. And most people that build a really great business, they're usually very passionate people,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I think you have to be. As entrepreneurs, we have to be this sort of illogically passionate person that takes on risks and thinks that there's nothing can go or nothing
Exactly.
can go wrong. But we think that we're optimists, forever optimists.
We are. We're the eternal optimist. I happen to be one, so I get it.
Exactly. So, but now what happens is, and this is what I mean, is that you for 30 years you're Dr. Smith. Patients love you. The staff needs you. Every day has fires to put out, but you love it. It's a purpose. You have the purpose.
Yeah.
And then you get this exit, right? And then nobody needs them anymore all of a sudden, right? No patients. There's no staff calling you with questions that you used to be annoyed by, but secretly you kind of miss. There's no schedule,
Fair enough.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe there's some people that you can't wait to get away from. But it's just that kind of are, and for a lot of people, this what happens is like now all of a sudden there's no purpose, right? Because money alone doesn't solve that. And I think having a community matters.
Yes.
That's that's why having a plan matters, because now you know what you're going to do, right? Because now these people you need another mission, right? Some people travel, some people teach, some people mentor, some people volunteer. But financial freedom isn't about doing nothing. It's about having the freedom to choose. And I think having a community of other docs that have done it, going through what you've done, um, is something that really helps to fill that void.
Yeah. Well put. Well put. You really do need that camaraderie with people who have been there before you, like anything else, and make that your part of your peer group. You've had one before, maybe that's with study clubs or people in your community, but like-minded or like situation individuals, other principals who have exited, or maybe they're in the process of that with, spending a couple of years with the group that bought them. It's something to take a look at. What does your community look like now? And what will you do at the end of that 3 to 5 years or whatever your exit looked like? What's your plan? What's your peer group going to look like? What do you want to do? What are some of the options you could look at? So things to think about way before your sale, of course, but really now they're coming into reality. So I think that can be a big deal. And do you find that some docs are afraid of making mistakes, like losing it all with their investing plan?
Yeah, I mean, hearing from someone who's already walked the road, I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing more invaluable than that. To me, I want to. I don't want to go on this road and journey and figure it out alone.
No.
It's right. It's lonely. It's a lonely path. You're more susceptible to mistakes. Um, you know, having a community and surrounding yourself with like-minded people. I think probably a lot of these people that have reached this point already understand that inherently to some degree, and it's like, hey, look, now I need to be able to have a community that's also in this gone through the same things that I have,
Yeah.
because they're the only ones that are going to also understand, some of the problems that you have after you've won already.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why I love what you have created, because you really do speak to people like you, dentists, doctors, clinicians. So I think that you have a great community going. So with that, I want to shift back to the mastermind, Walk of Wealth Mastermind. Talk to me about, okay, so let's say I'm selling my 5 location group practice and I've just been introduced to you. Where do you start? What's the initial conversation look like with someone who would maybe think about being a member? What does that membership look like? Tell me a little bit more. Let's dive into that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you like highlights of it. I don't want to make it a mastermind pitch or anything like
No,
that.
no,
But
no. But
a
I want to hear,
mastermind.
our listeners want to know.
No, I try. So yeah, I mean, I created this mastermind group. It's a private community where we built specifically for dentists who want to build passive income, become more tax efficient, create financial freedom beyond their practice. And that's basically what it is. It's a private community, and we source and do due diligence on deals together. We meet on Zoom. We have different industry leaders, including Diwakar, the CEO of Polaris, came and spoke to our group.
Yes.
And we have different industry leaders come about different topics about financial freedom and investing and due diligence. And it's essentially a community of really high quality docs that can work together, share resources, share their network, share advice. It's a great place for collaboration. And of course, we do a lot of investing. We've invested over $750 million of assets across the spectrum, across
Wow.
every geographic region in the country. So we've been very busy, and we've been helped over 150 dentists now start building passive income. And then the mastermind group is like it's a paid private community. We've limited it to 30 people. And this is a place where you can really come in and accelerate, compress timelines, reduce errors, and get to where you're trying to go faster, sooner, faster, and together.
Right. And with less risk. I find that in
Yes.
community, when you're able to collaborate with your peers, that it does reduce the risk of making mistakes. It does take out that loneliness factor, that I'm doing this myself or no one's been there before factor. So I would encourage people to reach out to you and,
Yes, it's not for everyone, but we should definitely, if you think that this is something that's interesting, and this conversation resonates with you,
Yeah.
and you're thinking about what comes next after your practice, this is who we're kind of for. This community is for.
Definitely. And there's just so much uncertainty. I think at some point during that sale, like Nan and I talked about, hitting the go button is a critical point. It's a turning point in your career. It's the next phase. So I think this is a great way to collaborate and to feel more secure in your path post sale.
Yes.
So, Jonny, thank you for coming on the show today. I know our listeners really enjoyed hearing from you. What is the best way for them to get in touch with you after the show?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jamie. It's a great podcast. Absolutely honored to be here, and I had a blast doing this. I would say if you're interested in building the second half of your financial journey, you can learn more at mastermind.walkofwealth.com. And, outside of the mastermind group, I'm very active LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Facebook. I have a private Facebook group called Passive Investing for Dentists, where we share educational content, we have conversations, we give away lots of resources about building wealth beyond dentistry.
Wonderful. And I will link to all of that in the show notes for our listeners so they can reach out, check you out on LinkedIn, Facebook, all of that. So to our entire audience, we love the questions you all send us. So keep them coming and we'll keep delivering the content that you ask for. As always, if you want to learn about any of our Polaris expert advisory services, or maybe there's a topic that we haven't covered that you'd like to hear about, you can go ahead and send us an email to info@polarishealthcarepartners.com, and be sure to go over to our website at polarishealthcarepartners.com, where you'll find weekly articles from Diwakar Sinha, our CEO, to grow and support your healthcare business, along with access to all podcast episodes, events, and a whole lot more. Thanks so much for being a loyal listener and subscriber. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a colleague and be sure to leave us a rating on any of your favorite podcast platforms. We'll see you on the next episode of the Group Practice Accelerator Podcast.